Hey guys, welcome back to the First Methodist Shreveport podcast. I'm here with Wil Adams, a beloved member here at First Methodist Church Shreveport. How are you, Will?
I'm doing great, Corey. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. You told me you had a great story about a Sunday school class here, so I know folks are going to be definitely excited to hear this.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to share it.
Yeah. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, like backstory of who Will is and how you got here?
Yeah, so I'm from Mansfield, Louisiana. I lived there and went to First Methodist Church there until I was 10 years old, and then my parents divorced. So my dad moved to Shreveport, and me and my two other brothers, we moved down to Baton Rouge with my mom, and we'd come back up to visit, weekends, holidays, all those things. And Dad had found First United Methodist Church here in Shreveport downtown. So this was anytime we came to visit Dad. Typically we'd go to church on Sunday.
Yeah.
Here we'd have lunch, and we'd kind of head back down to Baton Rouge for the weekend, or for the week.
Goodness, that's quite the trip.
It was, but it kind of made this place kind of feel like home.
Yeah.
And even when I went to college at Northwestern State in Natchitoches, and found a church there that we liked as well. But even when I'd come back and visit Dad, it was always we went to church. We'd go eat lunch, and then I could go back to school.
So you'd go from Natchitoches to Shreveport to go to church, or you'd have a church in Natchitoches? You said you went to.
Yeah, both. I had a church in Natchitoches we attended.
Okay.
But when we'd come up, especially for holidays, of course, you're a college kid doing the college things. I would go to church occasionally there at a church, but when we came up to Shreveport, this is where we called home.
Wow. Man, so that's incredible that this church has had that kind of history in your life. And
Yeah, it's. I remember Dr. Dave from his. He's still a good friend now. I talked to him just last week. But he's somebody that I love dearly and has been etched in my mind, and somebody I hold with very high regard. And I think it's because of him. We've continued to stay through this church. I guess from when I was about 10 or 11 years old up until now.
Goodness, that's great. And so you are helping guide the new Empower Hour Sunday School now?
So I am. I became a dad about 5 years ago now, almost. I've got a 16-year-old daughter, a 4-year-old daughter, and a 2-year-old daughter. Mm-hmm. And so as we were bringing our 4-year-old into the world, we kind of had the decision a lot of couples have, which is, where's where are we going to go to church?
Yeah.
What kind of church environment is my child going to grow up in? And if there were another kink in that, I was at this church and my wife was at another church. So we were kind of having to pit the two against each other.
Yeah. Similar denomination or?
Different denomination.
Even better.
She had gone to a couple of different churches, and she was drawn to this one that was a Catholic church. They had a really good priest for a long time who had retired, and she just continued to go to that church.
Yeah.
But also at that time, Dr. Day was, vocally saying he was looking for his replacement, and we thought, Dr. Day, we love you, but we sure don't know if we're going to like this new guy, which, luckily we do. But it was a hard decision to make on top of all the other things you're thinking of as a new parent. And I know the thing that made us choose this church over any of our other options was because of how well this church does with their youth and their youth programs. Especially on the way here, I was listening to the one that had just aired, the podcast that y'all had done with our new middle school director, who was fantastic. But it's people like him that I think are the reason that the church continues to attract so many young people like myself to the church, which then drove us to create this Sunday school class that we started a little over 2 years ago now.
That's incredible. And it speaks to the power and the influence this church has. Number one, the history that you talked about, you coming up here so much with your family, and then the ability to stay and not only stay but grow as a downtown church and maintain a youthful membership in First Methodist, because most people would look at this church and the history, they would think it is a potentially dying church because it's a downtown church and it also has a somewhat older population. But I think us going here, we see that there is very much a very vitalized portion of the church that is young and growing up in the church. And so
Couldn't agree more.
yeah.
No, there's, I mean, you're right, because if you look at the church from the outside, this church has been here forever. Surely the membership is, you know, getting older. And I would say that while that's certainly the case, there's so many young people that we've met in the church that have, probably similar to my story. They were here for a while, they went off to college, jobs took them other places. And if they were lucky enough to be able to come back here, they've hopefully continued to bring their families and their children back, which it seems like a lot of them have, which is how our class again got started. It was a lot of these families and people that we knew from being younger. We kind of reconnected, and like we all do, we have these good ideas on Sunday and say, hey, yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to get together and start this Sunday school class. And I think years passed by with us saying something like that. And finally something happened where I think two of the wives sent out a mass email and said, hey, God, okay, we're doing this. Like we're this is the church we're going to go to. We're going to start our own Sunday school class. We're going to have our kids all grow up together. And that's been a huge blessing.
Because let's be honest, the wives are the rudders that steer the ship of the family.
Absolutely. They let us be the face of it every now and then, but they run the show.
Exactly. And so how did this class get started? Like you said, your wife and another couple or another wife met and put the stamp of approval that this was going to happen. And so how did it go from there?
Yeah, we had two of the wives sent out an email and said, hey, like we're gauging interest in this class. We've all expressed it at some point. I think maybe there were 15 people on the email. And then had this party at somebody's house, and we said we were going to get together and, of course, have a good time, but also discuss, what our visions and thoughts were and plans were of the class and what our expectations kind of were. And we had that meeting, and within a month, it was August of 2021 is when we had our first Sunday school class group. There were about 8 or 10 people there. And now, depending on the week, we can have 25-ish in the classroom, which is great, especially when you've got the challenges of as a dad to young children. Some Sundays you never know what you're going to wake up to, but that's also, I think, that what makes our class so wonderful is that like those things do happen, and that's life. And so, if you're not there every Sunday, it's okay. But, we are going to hold you a little bit of accountable every now and then, because we do want you there and want your kids there. But we also know things happen and life happens because we're all kind of in the same walk in our journey with Christ. Yeah.
And so is it a similar age range as well, like married with kids, or what's the demographic of the class?
Yeah, everybody in the class is probably between 30 and 37 or 8. I think we've all got children with some more on the way. So we're going to keep growing the nursery downstairs.
Going to keep them busy.
What we are. And that's, now that I bring that up, I think the unsung heroes of our Sunday school class is really the nursery.
Very true.
Because with us, we wouldn't be able to get together like we do because our little routine is we get here for the 8:30 service. Every now and then my 4-year-old will beg her way into going to big church. So we'll take her down to big church and let her go down and listen to Miss Billy and Miss Stacy give the kids a message, and she'll come back with us and try not to be too disruptive in church. But then we drop her off at the nursery and daycare. And the ladies down there are just absolutely fantastic. Like they love our kids like they're their own. They take such good care of them. Like the kids get back in the car and they've got all these arts and crafts that they've done, like a snack or two, and they're singing songs about God. Like it's like the best way to end a like Sunday going home or going to lunch, knowing that they're like loved on and cared for like that. That's none of that would be possible without them.
Yeah, and I love what you said, that the nursery workers are the unsung heroes of the church, because, like you said, it is a massive blessing, and it frees up young parents so much to be able to come to church at all, just because I can't imagine. I'm sure you can't imagine going to church or Sunday school with your 3 kids like next to you the whole time. Like there's very little spiritual growth that's going to happen while you're having to corral 3 children, potentially with other people with kids in the same room. And
Absolutely.
so to have the blessing that this church has and its volunteers to take care of those kids is just a massive blessing. And to anyone who is thinking about it, you are definitely invited to be a volunteer. And I hope that that speaks to you as well, that your volunteering of your time impacts not just the kids that you're volunteering to help, but also the parents who are freed up to go to Sunday school. And so I just hope that resonates. And I so appreciate you bringing that up because, working on staff with the, children's directors, like that's a big thing that they need is the volunteers to come in and to help make that happen, to facilitate the watching of the kids so that the parents can go and enjoy the spiritual growth that and the community of the church that we all get to enjoy and that we all need.
Right.
And so I love it. And so how has this class grown? Because you said you started in August of 2021, and how many did y'all have starting out?
I think we had maybe 5 or 6 couple. I'll kind of speak of it in couples rather than people. So we had probably 5 or 6 couples initially, and then it's mostly been our kind of continued outreach, I guess, through friends that we know that have moved back to Shreveport and we're looking for a church home. Mm-hmm. Some of it was people that were already coming to Sunday school or coming to church, but just hadn't found a Sunday school yet. And we still have a lot of our friends that, we know are members of this church, but they aren't involved in a Sunday school class.
Yeah.
There is another Sunday school class. There's Sunday school class for just about every age group that you want, which is, looking back, I was joking with my wife a week or so ago, and I talked about coming to talk with you about our Sunday school class. And I said, looking back, like we probably should have explored to see if there was already a class out there that could have just taken us in rather than, going through the undertaking of working with Ashley Goad and getting our class kind of set up and having a room to meet and materials and like what we needed to do. But I think that whole experience has kind of made our class, closer in its own right.
Absolutely.
And so, we're really the way that it's growing again is just us reaching out to folks, or we've had a couple of people who just find us and have just showed up, which is, we'd welcome more of it. Mm-hmm. We've just got an even bigger room to house more people because our class kept growing.
Yeah.
And we surely hope that continues.
Excellent. And it sounds like in those beginning stages, was it mostly community, like the aspect of community that was drawing people into the class? Because like you're all in a similar stage of life, similar age, married with kids, and you're able to like go through life and you all understand what the other people in your class are going through. Was that like one of the drivers for the growth?
I think it certainly is once you're in the class.
Yeah.
I don't know that when we were getting everything started that we thought that community aspect would be as important as it is. Because being a young parent and in this world is so hard. I mentioned like you never know how the kids are going to wake up or what kind of mood they're going to be in. Like it takes up so much of your time, and then all of us are young professionals. Pretty much all of us work and do very well at our crafts, and so like that also in its own right takes a lot of time. But then when you add in, people getting sick and taking care of loved ones and aging parents and grandparents and physical ailments and all the other things that you go through, when you mix that in, like it's just hard. And that community thing, I think, has been one of the things that maybe we didn't know was going to be such a big piece to it all.
Yeah.
But I think it's been the thing that will continue to keep us together because that's being able to check the kids into the nursery and like standing next to another dad and you're like, hey man, how was your weekend? He said, it's been a lot. You kind of take a deep breath and you're like, man, I know.
Glad I'm not the only one.
Like me too. Like you don't have to say anything more than that.
Yeah. We all at the doctor's office 3 times too.
Yeah. It's, pink eyes going around if you didn't know. It's the community aspect has been huge.
Yeah.
And another thing that was interesting is my wife and I just had a weekend away this last weekend. Her aunt and uncle are amazing. They decided they wanted to watch the girls and let us have kind of a weekend to ourselves.
Really?
And
I've not experienced that.
Yeah,
yet. I can't imagine.
when you get there, it's a huge blessing. But they live here in town, which is a big plus. But we got to go away, and one of the things we wanted to do is we wanted to find a TV show to watch. And so we found this one. It was only like 4 or 5 episodes, but it was called The Blue Zones, like Living to 100. And it was about these communities all across the world where people have found a community and they have an extreme amount of longevity. And there's all sorts of kind of different reasons. But I think pretty much every blue zone, like one of the reasons was having a sense of community and like having a purpose. And for us, going back to the community point that you mentioned, I think that was something we didn't know was going to happen to our class, that we'd become such a close-knit group. But I know it's one of the things that's going to continue to help us whenever we go through just the struggles that get thrown at all of us. Because even though it's only been 2 years, we've had a lot of joyful things happen. We've had a lot of sad things happen.
Yeah.
In that class, I know because I'm one of those where I've had some pluses and minuses. That class has held together and kept us strong and kept our faith and kept us on a good mood and helped us be able to move forward.
I love it. And so what, I know you said there have been some ups and downs, like in what ways, like do y'all's Sunday school class, like support each other? And have y'all gotten, before we started the podcast, you mentioned that there are older Sunday school classes that kind of come by and like check on y'all. Are there any things that y'all have taken from them to implement into your Sunday school class to see like what's worked there that y'all can do with your Sunday school class, or I guess a little bit more on other aspects of community, and if you've taken anything from other Sunday school classes that worked?
Yeah, great question. I think initially when we were asking, Dr. Ashley Goad, what do we do? Like, we want to do this thing, but like we don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And she said, "We'll start Right Now Media, the app that we have. We watch about like a 10-minute video, and then there's a leader guide, and we have a different couple every week that kind of leads the class." Which I love because I've never been a part of a Sunday school class where it wasn't someone from the church coming and kind of giving you like a little mini sermon almost in your class. This kind of like you get a study guide and you have about a week to look it over and kind of prepare a few things to talk about. I mean, and the questions are all there, so it's not too difficult.
Yeah.
But we watch the video and go through the questions, and we have sometimes a very good, not debate, but just good conversation about ways that we interpreted things or things that we thought were true or not. And just different conceptions or misconceptions. And then because we're all together and we do things together as a class, outside of just meeting on Sundays, as far as the sense of community goes, I think the thing that brings that together with the class is just that we know what's going on in each other's lives. We know if somebody's got a sick child. We know if somebody had a parent that passed away. We know for the most part who's going through what things. And so it's kind of easy to reach out to them.
Yeah.
And also a couple of times we've had things come up in the class that were unexpected where, it's a safe space. Like, if you're not safe in your church, where are you safe? And a lot of times, people have been very vulnerable, including myself. I lost a brother almost a year ago.
I'm sorry.
And that class made it a heck of a lot easier to get through that.
That's such a benefit, just to have those people around you that you can trust and you can be vulnerable with and open up. So I'm so glad that y'all made that available for other people.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I know one thing for the class that if we're missing anything, because there's been so many blessings that have happened throughout just the 2 years that we've been there. But we've done a lot of studies on Paul, who I did not know a lot about Paul. Paul loved to write letters. Seems like anytime he got a chance, Paul was writing a letter about something.
Right.
But there's many points in the Bible where it says, and I think it's in Corinthians, but he says, you got to be giving of your time, talent, and treasure. And so, part of our time is certainly time spent here in the church. Yeah, we do a good job, I believe, with sharing our treasure, because that's something that we do talk about a lot, especially with us just wrapping up kind of stewardship month last month. But one thing that we want to strive to do a better job at is, even though we've had Michelle Osborne come speak to us, is, trying to get outside of our classroom and into our community about how we can impact more people than just those that are inside the walls of the church. And so when we kind of look at the class moving forward, like if we're missing any sort of piece, it's probably that we need to do more outreach outside of just the walls of the church.
Yeah, that's great. It's great that y'all are thinking about that.
Trying to. Again, with kids, it's difficult, but there's always an excuse to not do something. So we're trying to actively find ways to do more with what we've been given.
Yeah, and I love that, just because it's so easy to fall into like comfortable Christianity and like just come here on Sunday, you have someone give you a lesson, you have coffee, you have a little bit of community, but to take that initial or that extra initiative to go and do more, like to look at what the Bible's calling us to do and do more with missions, get your Sunday school involved in missions as a group with that community aspect as well, is just very admirable.
Right. You get out of things what you put in. So, I think going to church and showing up at Sunday, that's step one, and it's absolutely vital. Yeah. But then to us, the next step was us getting involved in our Sunday school class. But that our walk with Christ isn't over. Like that's kind of step two for us. It's like our next step, we think, together as a group, because it's kind of easier if we do it all as a group, is to try to find ways to, share with others and give more to others. And so that's that'll be our next step, I'm sure, of many. But like you said earlier, we're in a hallway with a lot more seasoned Sunday schoolers that we can learn a lot from. So that's a blessing that we'll continue to cherish.
Yeah, absolutely. So would you recommend starting a Sunday school to anyone, or what would you tell someone to expect if they wanted to start a Sunday school like y'all have?
I couldn't imagine not going to Sunday school, because I think it's the favorite part of my week every single week. Kind of refuels you for the week ahead. And I mean, and church is great. Like, not knocking Dr. Bell. I'm sure you're watching this. This is not a knock at you. You do a fantastic job. But like our Sunday school class, it's just it fills you up. And so for anybody that's, I guess, wanting to start a class or even join one, because again, the church has plenty of Sunday school classes. Yeah. We'll always make room for more, I'm sure. But if you're wanting to start one, just start somewhere and just do it. Yeah. Ashley was a wonderful resource for us. Of course, myself or anybody in our class, and I'm sure almost anybody at the church would be more than willing to help them. Yeah. But it has been such a blessing to myself, and I think every other family in there, the things that we've been able to do every Sunday.
Yeah. And so you said it's become the best part of your Sunday, and I'm curious, just because this is how I felt before I started going to a Sunday school. I looked at Sunday school as probably one of the last things I would want to do in addition to a Sunday morning. So were you in a similar situation, or did you enjoy Sunday school and then you just needed something to, I guess, fit where y'all's life was?
No, that's, I appreciate your honesty, because that's, but it's true. Yeah. It felt like we were checking the box. We were doing things we were supposed to do. Our parents would like us better if we went. Like people in the community will see me, like maybe it's good for my business. Like you have all those things, I guess, that you think of that it's important to other people, but it's not really important to you. And I think the Sunday school class has made it to where it's kind of like I don't care about those other things. I want to go because it's important to me. Yes. And it took a little while to get there. And I don't know that my cup was ever filled up quite the same way in church as it is in Sunday school. Because I don't think I thought and felt the same way about church as I did, pre our class starting towards after.
Yeah.
I mean, now I've got a better understanding of the Bible because when the class started, it's like I'd heard all these things and I'd heard the stories, but I couldn't recite anything to you. Like
Yeah.
I didn't know. I was in church my entire life, almost every Sunday, and I couldn't recite a lot of those things that I think I can now.
Yeah.
And they mean more to you, which is why I said like we want our class plans to continue to get more involved because the more we put in, we know the more we get out. And so maybe there's a selfish reason there, but I think it's the right reason too. And I think more importantly, it's like, we want our kids to see us doing those things. Like one of my favorite memories as a kid was, can't remember when, I guess I was in high school, but it was Love Feast here and helping serve the homeless, which was something I was not looking forward to. It was like, that's great, but that's for somebody else to do.
Yes.
And then you get older and you're like, well, we're the congregation. We're that somebody else. Like at some point we've got to raise our hand and volunteer to do that. And my parents drug us to it and we did it. And it was such a rewarding experience because those people are just like us. That they struggle with the same things that we struggle with, just on a different level.
Yeah.
And it makes you feel so good to volunteer your time for people like that. And that's something that we want to continue to, strive to do and instill in our kids.
I love how you said that, it's almost like you have a sense of pride in your church to say that, yeah, our church does this thing called Love Feast, and it puts on a meal for the people who maybe don't have a family or the homeless in our community, and it's great. But it's almost like the connection is lost of, oh, we are the church. Like, that's me. That's what I'm supposed to go do.
Right.
So I love that you have that. You just made that connection for me that it is the church, but we are the church, and we are called to do these things. And when we say our church does this, it invokes that there has to be connection of the church body in whatever the thing is.
That's absolutely right.
I love it. And I have another question, but I can't remember it. So what is the future of Empower Hour? Y'all got, you said 25 people now?
Yeah, so I guess that would equate to about 12 or 13 couples. The future would really just be for the class to continue to grow. Certainly to do more. We need to get back with Michelle and figure out exactly which mission we want to help with, and then also volunteering more with the church, and again, so our kids can see it. Like we talked about the birthday party for Jesus that we all go to with our kids. Like that's such a fun thing to do that the kids love, and like they need volunteers for that. And we're the volunteers, we need to be. Or if we can't be, like maybe our parents need to be, or maybe somebody who doesn't have their kids or grandkids that they could volunteer and help us out because we're trying to be there with our kids. But you're right. Like we are the church, and sometimes you can give to the church in your time. Sometimes it's your talent. Sometimes it's your treasure. But you got to give something, and hopefully all three. But the season of life you're in, may dictate if it's one more than the other. But we need to be active members of the church, and again, we want our kids to see that. And I'm just thinking of all these funny stories. Like the church is so wonderful. Like we go to the 8:30 service, and we're some of the only younger. Our kids are already up, so it's just easier for us to go to the earlier service versus the later. And my 4-year-old, I took her one time when Mom was out of town. No, she was on call for work. So I said, I told my 4-year-old, yeah, you can come with me. And so she sat in the pew next to me. They've got these little Ziploc bags with activities they can do. But she's sitting there in church, and like I start tearing up because I'm like, I may seem emotional on the video, but like I'm typically not at all. But like this church like brings it out of me, especially like seeing your kid like in the church pew like reading the Bible. Like she can't read, by the way, but it's open. It's probably upside down, but it's sweet. And like then she runs to the front to go see Miss Billy or Miss Stacy or whoever's up there giving the children's message. Sometimes I have to walk her down because she's a little shy or timid. And then sometimes she's rowdy in there. Most of the time she's an angel. But the people of the church, I think, are kind of like us. We're like they're just grateful the kids are there because our kids are the future of the church, and it's important for my wife and I. And again, the reason we chose this church was because there are kids in church, and we want to keep it that way.
Yeah. And I love that what you said again. I mean, you've said so many great things. Seeing your daughter open the Bible, and even if she can't read it, like she's looking at it. That's a testament to you as a parent, because it's like the monkey see, monkey do thing, where she's doing it not because, maybe God spoke to her and said, "Hey, open the Bible," but she more than likely saw you or your wife do it. And so she wants to be like that. And so that speaks to, as a massive testament to you as biblical parents, to instill that to your kids to the point where they are picking up the word, even if they can't read it. They still know, like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
And, it just opens that path for God to speak into their lives at some point when they do learn to read and are able to read the Bible.
Right.
And hopefully she doesn't start in the Old Testament and try to pronounce all those names.
Yeah, not a good place to start.
No, but I love it. And so, anything we've missed, or any stories from your Sunday school class that you want to share?
There was another thing that I think the Sunday school was super valuable in, was looking at this recent period of discernment that we were in and all the church was going through. And it was there was a lot of weight on us, I think, as young people and young parents, because we didn't want to make the wrong decision. Because this decision is going to impact us and our church for the next 40, 50, 60 years. And more importantly to us, we felt like we were making a decision for our kids.
Yeah.
And I've continued, even since his time with this church has subsided and he's gone off to greener pastures in Tyler, Texas. Dr. Day and we stay in close contact. And I called him, letting him know my concerns, and I just don't know enough. Teach me. And he was, as always, so gracious and kind, and kind of spoke to me at an elementary level, and then kind of worked his way up. And then I shared that message with our class, and he was kind enough one Sunday to. He's very good with technology. He zoomed into our classroom and did a Zoom meeting with our Sunday school class.
Really?
And spoke to us all about what we were going through. And it wasn't so much, he never led us in any direction. I don't think he should have or wanted to. What he did was give us a whole lot of information to help us make the best decision we could going forward. And it was to think of making a decision that I think was so vitally important for the church would have been very hard on our own. The decision was made pretty easily when we were all together and could talk about it in a safe space, and said, what about this, and what does this mean, and this mean? And every Sunday we had questions, and the church did a great job with the resources that they had available. We had a couple things that weren't quite answered, but it was easy to go find an answer. We kind of bring it back the next Sunday and talk about it again. And that was just that was a hard time that even had my wife and I researching our denomination and other denominations and other churches, because you didn't want to make the right decision. And luckily, through a lot of prayer by us and the church and talks amongst the Sunday school class, I think we all made the decision that we thought was right, and we couldn't be happy with where we are moving forward.
Yeah.
But without the Sunday school class, again, I just think that decision would have been so hard. So it was, again, it's to be able to have that community amongst each other where it's a safe space where we can talk about thoughts and ideas, and not have to worry about how we're going to be viewed or judged. Which is kind of rare, because if you do that in any other media platform out there, you're going to be judged a lot.
Very true.
And critically, and that doesn't happen here, and so that's very sacred.
For sure. I love it. I love just the light that you brought to the importance of Sunday school classes, and I feel like most of us who are maybe new with families or new to the church in general, or maybe going to a new church, you go to a church as kind of like an individual. You go to the Sunday or the service, go home, but the element that you've experienced and introduced these other people to is like the community within the church. Because it's hard sometimes, like with First Methodist being as big as it is, it's real easy to just go in, see maybe one or two people you know, and then leave and go get lunch. But it's, I'm sure, a lot more enjoyable for you now and you probably have a more full experience of the church when you have like your own community within the church.
Absolutely.
And so I love it that what y'all have done and the impact you've made in the people's lives and y'all's Sunday school, and hopefully this inspires other people to provide that community for others.
Yeah, and you're dead on. Like we have a big, beautiful church, and when you go in on Sunday, it's almost like you're going to see the Statue of Liberty. Like you're going to see this big, beautiful monument that is just, I mean, couldn't be duplicated.
Yeah, like driving up Texas Street is a very surreal thing. Like to drive up to this church,
it's iconic. Like I don't care where you're from. I love Shreveport. This church is Shreveport. But you're right, you walk in on Sunday, there's a lot of people there. There's a lot of people in this church. But going to Sunday school makes this big church a heck of a lot smaller.
Yes,
and
very
so
true.
If there's anybody that's watching this that is looking for a Sunday school class, like we'd love to have you. But also, like there's tons of Sunday school classes that this church already has established that would be easy to join. And if none of those fit what you're looking for, start your own. It's not very hard.
Yeah.
And y'all have been, everybody at the church has been so supportive and helpful. And Ashley still checks in with us quarterly, if not more, on like, what do y'all need? What can we buy you? And we're like, we're good. Like you have coffee and donuts occasionally. And we're pretty happy.
Oh man, it's hard to be coffee and donuts.
It is.
Oh goodness. Well, I've enjoyed this talk, Wil.
So I have to, Corey. Thank you for having me.
Well, guys, we will see y'all next time.